The end of Ecclesia Dei may well be on the immediate horizon. For those who don't know, the Ecclesia Dei Commission was established to essentially manage the traditional Latin Mass and allow the Mass of the Ages to be said without the permission of the local bishop. Not that it's actually honored in many places, with bishops defying Rome, by still putting up as many barriers as possible to the saying of the Latin Mass, but the Ecclesia Dei Commission sounds like it is going to be suppressed via motu proprio, possibly as early as this coming month, meaning in a month or less. This, on top of a papal encyclical and a book being released by Francis, means that the Church is going to have its hands full at a time when a lot of people won't be paying as close attention as they should. Let's dive into this a little more deeply. The former commission Ecclesia Dei was established in 1988 for the Old Liturgy, as some would call it, and it was turned into a section of the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Divine Faith in January 2019 by Francis, and it's going to disappear definitely in October, according to Italian journalist Marco Tossati. And he's got very nice sources in the Roman Curia who like to talk to him about all things that we are currently interested in this situation. The section, as he calls it, is currently led by French Monsignor Patrick Descourteaux. Tossati describes this as a step towards dismantling the motu proprio Summorum Pontificum, which was promulgated by Benedict XVI and which allowed any priest anywhere to say the traditional Latin Mass without special permission of his bishop. Again, as I said, this is being ignored by many of them. Often those same bishops who say that people like you and I are being disobedient for not wanting to follow any Pachy-Mommy-inspired movements in the world. But if Mr. Tossati's sources are correct, then the suspension of Ecclesia Dei entirely will have several consequences. One consequence will be that the so-called old right communities will end up under the authority for the Congregation of the Religious, led by one Cardinal Jean-Bras Davies, who has the reputation for being, shall we say, hostile to religious communities that have traditional charisms and are dedicated to traditional liturgy and habits. Let's dive a little deeper. To Marco Tossati's website we actually go. According to him, if Ecclesia Dei were to disappear, the indult system would return, making the traditional liturgy being subject to the whim of the local bishop. This despite all reports being that the bishops are overall surprisingly okay with the traditional Mass. Again, I said overall. Maybe it's the fact that the so-called traditionalists tend to donate money to the parish and dioceses, and a lot of non-traditionalists don't. And when I use the word traditionalist, I tend to actually mean people who are traditionally minded, not necessarily just which liturgy you go to. Okay, just remember that. But maybe, though, I am being uncharitable with some of my baseline assumptions going on with some of the hostility we have towards the traditional liturgy. According to Mr. Tossati, 2/3 of the bishops worldwide responded favorably to the Vatican survey about the Latin Mass. As you'll recall, a month or so ago, or 2 months ago, I reported, as did many others, that a survey was sent from the Vatican to the bishops of the world, asking them how the traditional Mass was being, what kind of demand there was in the dioceses for it, and how many priests said that, and also how many priests used the traditional form of the other sacraments as well. And apparently, 2/3 of the bishops responded positively. They found the presence of the traditional liturgy in their dioceses had a positive effect. 2/3 of them, meaning the vast majority of them, are actually okay with the traditional liturgy and everything that comes with it. And they view it as having some kind of positive impact in their communities. But this coming change isn't the first undermining of Summorum Pontificum that has come from the Vatican in recent years. To quote Mr. Tossati's piece on this, quote, "As you will remember, in January 2019, the attack on Ecclesia Dei started with a motu proprio. Monsignor Guido Pozzo, the head of Ecclesia Dei, had been charged with bringing order to the new life of the Pontifical Music Chapel, placed under the direct management of the Master of Pontifical Celebrations, Monsignor Guido Marini. The central points of the motu proprio are these. Considering that the conditions that led the Holy Pontiff John Paul II to the institution of the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei have changed today, noting that the institutions and religious communities which usually celebrate in the extraordinary form have today found their own stability in numbers and in life, noting that the aims and issues dealt with by the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei are mainly of a doctrinal nature, Wishing that these aims become ever more evident to the conscience of ecclesial communities, this apostolic letter, motu proprio data, resolution, the Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei, established on the 2nd of July 1988 with the motu proprio Ecclesia Dei Adflicta, is suppressed. The tasks of the commission in question are fully assigned to the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, within which a special section will be set up, committed to continuing the work of supervision, promoting, and protection conducted up to now by the suppressed Pontifical Commission Ecclesia Dei. End quote. The last part was a direct quote from a leaked document Mr. Tosati's sources have provided him. In short, the institute established by John Paul II and the motu proprio promulgated by Benedict XVI will be suppressed, and that work started already with what I read to you, which was from early last year. Though the effects of the Ecclesia Dei Commission will be legal for the time being at any rate, meaning you don't have to worry about anything for the moment. But under the new system, the traditional liturgy, and I suspect far more importantly for those driving these changes, the communities that observe traditional living will be under the supervision of a prelate of the Roman Curia, who is said to be openly, shall we say, hostile to traditional groups in the Church. With a return to an indult system, your Fraternal Society of St. Peter and Institute of Christ the King, Sovereign Priest, and similar groups should be largely unaffected in any meaningful way for the typical layperson, as they have always operated at the behest of your local bishop anyway, and operate in parishes owned by them. The bishop has always had the right to invite or dismiss groups of that nature. It has happened before, and to some high-profile groups. The diocesan priests will now be subject to receiving a memo from the bishop that can end any traditional liturgy in the diocese, whereas that isn't the case under the present system. That is a major change. This is one reason among many that traditional Catholics often tell the faithful to not attend what we call indult masses. What this will likely result in is that some bishops who had tolerated the traditional liturgy in their dioceses, but who don't like it, will feel emboldened to move against the traditional liturgy. One effect may be that the groups I just mentioned will be dismissed because of homilies given that fail to accompany the laity to the satisfaction of the modernist bishops. What comes to mind is the case of Father Kalchik in Chicago. As you'll recall, he was the priest who was dismissed because he found some of Cardinal Bernardine's favorite things in his parish attic, including a banner for the celebration of the first deadly sin. His parish had a dark history that is better left unsaid, but he had these items destroyed publicly, earning him the ire of Cardinal Supich. Now, I won't pretend that Father Kalchik was a traditionalist priest with the love of the Mass of the Ages or anything, but that underlying issue is there. The priest understood the touchier points of the faith, those parts that conflict with the values of the world the most, and he taught and stood for the truth. You will hear homilies of that kind pretty regularly in FSSP and Institute of Christ the King Sovereign Priest parishes anywhere you go, and for some bishops this isn't acceptable. Guess why? For now, the kinds of bishops worth worrying about turn a blind eye to this, likely because these groups keep folks like us in check. But with a motu proprio like the one Tosati wrote about, that can change entirely. That motu proprio can be understood as an official endorsement for taking action against naughty trads who won't get with the program and building the ape of the church over the true church, or whatever may be left of that construction project. Time will tell, to be sure. The thing may be done already for all we know, though I don't think it is. In the history of the attempts to undermine the resurgence of not only the traditional liturgy, but also the traditional form of all seven sacraments, which is a much bigger issue, much of the focus has been on religious communities. There are dozens of examples of this, ranging from traditionalist orders of nuns and women religious being suppressed or pressured into abandoning their habits and putting on pantsuits, to the effect that many of the women left their orders and found new ones to join, as well as similar accounts happening to monks and friars, including possibly the most famous account being the example of the Franciscan Friars of the Immaculate, who have been suppressed to the point of the group almost not existing anymore. That case is probably the most infamous, and now we are looking at the specter of this happening in some form or another to groups that answer directly to the bishop, though probably not in such a dramatic fashion. This is why during these times we tell you not to advertise when your traditionalist parish takes some, shall we say, liberties when it comes to adhering to official edicts from the bishops or the sovereign, especially about certain things related to the affliction. It can cause them serious problems and can result in their being censured by the bishop. When this motu proprio comes down, this becomes especially important to remember. We have a duty to support and sustain our parishes, especially when they're actually upholding the traditions of the faith and teaching the faith coherently. In these times of uncertainty, it remains to be seen what the landscape will be like on the other side of these efforts. So remain prayerful and vigilant. And let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. Thanks for listening. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.